Welcome back to another episode of the Housing Collective podcast. My name is Tom Neely, founder and director of Nemo Search, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Louise Bassett, Chief Executive of Gentoo Group. So Louise, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the Housing Collective podcast. So for the listeners, could you give us a brief introduction to yourself and your organisation?
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. And I'm delighted to be part of this. So thanks for the invitation. So as you said, I'm Louise Bassett. I'm the Chief Exec of Gentoo Group. And we're a Sunderland-based social housing provider. We have about 30,000 homes and 60,000 customers. And so all of our homes are in Sunderland, which makes us quite unique. And for those of you who don't know, Sunderland is in the northeast of England. We mainly have general needs homes and some sheltered accommodation and extra care schemes. We have about 1,100 colleagues who serve our customers every day, and 75% of those colleagues actually live in Sunderland as well. So we're very much so Sunderland focused. We're a purpose, values-driven organisation, ensuring that we provide warm, safe and decent homes for our customers. And that involves really a significant amount of activity every day, just servicing those homes. We spend £1 million every week in Sunderland, investing in our homes, in roofs, kitchens, bathrooms. And our teams, our housing teams, go above and beyond to really support our customers. So it is a brilliant organisation, which we never have enough money and we always have lots to do. But I think that is the story of social housing.
Yeah, no, it's a brilliant story. And lots that I want to kind of unpick on that, Louise, for sure, particularly with the size and being so kind of geographical centric to Sunderland. So I'll pick that up later in the conversation. But firstly, I want to talk about you and your background, because you have such a fascinating background. You obviously worked in the pharmaceutical industry and then moved across kind of like, say, the commercial sector into housing. So talk to me about what attracted you to the sector to make that change, and also why Gentoo back in 2014, 2015?
Yes, I probably have to sort of go back a little bit before I get to that point. But so I am an HR professional by background, and I've always been really passionate about leadership and business improvement, how organizations work, how to make organizations more effective, and improving organizational performance through people. So that's always really been my passion. And I spent over 20 years in the private sector, mainly the pharmaceutical sector, as you said. For around 15 years prior to joining Gentoo, I worked for Merck, which is a global American pharmaceutical company. And I worked for Merck in various HR leadership roles across Europe, supporting Europe. And I really learned so much about business when working with Merck. Merck was the kind of organization where, as an HR professional, as an HR leader, you really got the opportunity. You were very much part of the business. There were no business discussions without HR in the room, and HR was very much at the top of the table as well in Merck. So I was so lucky to have such a good career there. And, ethics and integrity were a massive part of Merck as a pharmaceutical organization. And that was something that was really instilled in me throughout my career then. It's definitely shaped me. And I think it's why, I've been so interested in, when I joined Gentoo, that kind of governance and regulation and purpose, really very much so. So I think when I was working at Merck, doing some amazing work with some amazing people, Merck had fantastic leaders and really invested in the development of their people. I'm so grateful for the experiences I gained there. But it gave me that kind of diverse business perspective and a real sort of learning about how organizations operate. So I left Merck with a dream of returning to the Northeast and bringing all my corporate knowledge back to the Northeast into a Northeast business. I wasn't aware of social housing. I was aware of council housing. I didn't have any idea that these beautiful social housing organizations existed across the country. So when I first met with people at Gentoo, I was really struck by the importance of the work they did for people in Sunderland and also the communities. And I wanted to be part of trying to help improve Gentoo really at that time. Gentoo was in a very challenging position in October 2015 when I joined them. The government had introduced a rent reduction, and Gentoo had to save significant funds to be able to operate. So I was part of that. So I joined at a really difficult time. And then over the next sort of couple of years, we went through a regulatory downgrade because of weak governance. And so I spent the first 7 years at Gentoo really helping Gentoo improve its organization, still be really focused on our purpose, but also trying to improve our governance in it. So I was the exec director for corporate services. And, then my role expanded to include customer complaints, and that kind of customer journey. And then I took on property maintenance. And so I gained a lot of experience at Gentoo right across the organization before taking on the role of chief exec a couple of years ago. So I think it's I feel like I've brought a lot of my corporate knowledge from Merck, and my passion for people has really been we've had the opportunity to do a lot of work around people and culture over the last couple of years.
Fascinating. And clearly you've been on such a significant journey yourself as well, from, as you say there, October 2015 as HR director to now chief executive, which is a wonderful story. And you initially took the chief executive role, should I say, back in 2023 as on an interim basis. And you and I have spoken previously around being what can be described as perhaps a reluctant chief executive initially. So talk to me about why you were initially quite hesitant around taking that permanent role, and then what ultimately convinced you to do the role now and do such a great job as well.
Yeah, so I haven't hidden the fact that I was a reluctant chief exec when I was asked to be the interim chief exec at Gentoo in January 23. It was never on my career path, and I'd never really considered it, and I wasn't expecting the board to ask me to do it and step in as the interim. I've always loved work, and I've always enjoyed being a leader, but I've never wanted to be at the top of an organization. I've always really gained a lot of satisfaction throughout my career of supporting others to be successful and supporting other senior leaders to do that. So it wasn't my aspiration really. I'm also naturally an introvert, on top of everything else, and being in the limelight really horrified me. The thought of it horrified me. And also importantly, I didn't know if I could do it. So I think, I'm quite a realist. I really have to take decisions seriously. Gentoo is a really important organization with 60,000 customers who rely on us every day, and all of our amazing colleagues who rely on us. And I would never not take that responsibility seriously. So I had all of those doubts really about being an interim chief exec. And I think, not taking that seriously would have been the wrong thing to do for me. That was my nervousness about taking on that interim role.
Yeah, but no looking back now, Louise.
Definitely no looking back. I think when I made the decision, once I started being the interim, I think I was really grateful for the confidence that our board had in me, and particularly Emily Cox, our fantastic chair of the board. But also, the teams I'd worked with before at Gentoo, so colleagues and peers who had confidence in me, and that meant a lot. It gave me a lot of confidence. And by the time the permanent role came up, I was hoping the board and our customers would support me to take on that role, which they obviously did.
Brilliant. And how, from your perspective, you talk about Emily there, how important is that chief executive chair relationship?
I think it's really important, Tom. I think that the role of the board is massively important to a chief exec. And I've learned that over the last couple of years, having a really strong, capable board to have them challenge you, be your critique, be that critical friend, and also bring their wisdom and experience is just massively important being a chief exec. And the role of the chair is hugely important. So I've used Emily extensively in my first year, where she would check in on me every day to see, how is it going, and it was great to have that support and somebody to talk to support me in the early days, and she's still an amazing support.
Definitely, that's amazing to hear. And just from out of interest, Louise, one of the many comments that we hear in the sector at the moment, just because of how challenging it is that you've got a very capable board there that is a critical friend. They have a huge amount of experience, and that's exactly the reason why they're a board member. But given the challenges and the scrutiny from the regulator, there is the often frustration that boards can sometimes drop down into more operational matters. So how do you manage the board, or what advice would you give to chief executives managing that board to make sure that they are doing what a board member should be, is being that critical friend whilst being kind of strategically asking you those questions rather than getting in the weeds?
I think it's really difficult for boards actually not to get into the operational weeds at times because of the changing role they have. And, what more minute you can be talking about, are you compliant on gas servicing? How is your water hygiene performance? Looking at those kind of landlord safety factors. The next minute you can be talking about customer complaints and tenant satisfaction measures, and then you can be talking about the future of the organisation and the budget challenges. So it's really difficult. And I think our job as an executive team is to really make sure that we are very clear with the board on what we are asking of them, and making sure that we were very clear in our meetings, in our agendas, in our reports to the board that this is the kind of level of input we need from you on certain subjects, because it's very easy for them to get into detail, and we do have that. But also I think it's good for us as an executive team to be challenged on some of the operational things at times as well. So especially when regulations changing, we're entering into our ABS law, and some of the challenges that's bringing, and the nervousness around boards as well, to make sure that they're getting the right level of assurance and feeling comfortable they can ask some of those questions that actually might seem operational but are important to them. And boards have a really responsible job. So, but it's a constant challenge. We've just had a board effectiveness review done, which was really positive. But one of the opportunities is to make sure that we stay strategic at a board level.
Definitely. And like you say, it's hard, isn't it? It's a constantly moving beast, is it? And also the role of a board member is to be naturally inquisitive. So you sometimes ask those probably more operational questions. So it's really interesting, your views on that, Louise. And I guess also just talking about your background as well. Your background is in HR, which I think is fantastic because it's so different to your stereotypical CEO pathway, particularly in housing. So how do you feel like your perspective from HR has shaped your leadership approach at Gentoo?
Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting question. I think, my career has been about servicing business leaders and helping organizations improve. And I think everyone who knows me well knows that I believe that culture eats strategy for breakfast, as Peter Druck has said. I genuinely believe that it is all about the people and culture. And I like to think that my HR background has put that at the forefront of my leadership journey. And, the fact that I do value what people do, the difference they can make, the power of people. I think, I fundamentally believe that people make such a huge difference in organizations, and having amazing people around you is what develops amazing cultures as well and makes businesses really effective. So I think my HR background has shaped that, my thinking on leadership. And, I get such a buzz from seeing people succeed, develop differently, grow in their roles. I love to see people who I think, wow, you're better than me. This is, it's great to see people grow and develop. So I definitely think it shaped my my leadership journey by being an HR professional. However, having said that, some of the chief execs I admire are not HR professionals. So I admire I could name a number of chief execs who've been really supportive of me in the last couple of years, or just been that person to pick up the phone, send a text message to, and, accountants, lawyers, housing professionals who've worked in housing all their careers and have that, that kind of that wisdom and experience. So I think it's not really about your profession, it's more about your leadership, I would say.
Definitely. It's really interesting. And just on that, but I guess there is that natural, you talk about kind of what you said at the beginning, Louise, just that reluctance as a CEO of perhaps at times the imposter syndrome. I know a lot of people with a similar background to yourself at an executive level have that arguably imposter syndrome of thinking, am I right to go for a chief executive? Because there's, as you say, there's all different other kind of specialisms, but from an HR perspective, you don't see that often in the press and across the UK. So what advice would you give to an executive with a similar background to yourself from a HR corporate services looking to take that first step as a chief executive?
I think what really matters is being purpose driven. And if you are driven by purpose and you really believe that you want to be the leader of an organization, a social housing organization, and have the ethics and integrity to run that organization, make those tough calls, I think it doesn't matter what your background is. I think customers are at the forefront of everything we do, and you have to be customer focused and purpose driven in social housing. It's so important. And I think that cuts across many experiences and backgrounds. So I think I wouldn't get too hung up on what your professional experience is. I was talking to another chief exec who was a building surveyor by profession. I think he's done one of these podcasts actually, and I think he's inspiring. I think, talking with him, I would say that there are things he probably does better than I do, maybe things I do differently to him, better than him maybe. I think it just takes that diversity of thought and experience to be a chief exec. And I really think collaboration in the sector and learning from each other is so important. So I think we should just value the diversity that we all bring and look to learn those gaps and fill those gaps with learning and collaboration with each other.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you, Louise. That's a really, really good answer. And just in regards to just conscious to try and touch on Gentoo's journey, because it has been a journey. You've been at the heart of that as well. So you've recently achieved the highest grading in housing for a G1 V1 C1. So a huge congratulations to you and the organisation. So can you talk to us in a bit more detail about that journey that you've been on to reach that milestone, particularly when we need to take it a step back and back in 2017 when you were downgraded to a G3, and the journey is incredible. So talk to us more detail about that.
Yeah, so Gentoo was downgraded to a G3 in 2017. And at that time, we weren't a well-governed organisation, and the regulator were absolutely right to downgrade us at that time. And one of the benefits, actually, if you can call it a benefit, of being in such a dark, difficult place where you know that things aren't going well, is that you learn from those failures, you learn from those mistakes. And so Gentoo has done a significant amount of learning to get from G3 to G1 with a huge amount of effort. It's taken a long time to get to that point, but we are exceptionally well governed now, and we have been for a number of years. So I think that the way that we're regulated and the change in regulation to introduce consumer regulation is and the consumer standards is so important. I'm a big fan of the consumer standards. I think, how can you argue that consumer standards are not important in regulation? It's absolutely critical. So I've welcomed them, and we developed a program in 2023, which was really ensuring that we were meeting the regulatory standards across the board and really focusing on customers. And what I communicated to our teams in January 2023 was that I wanted us to be a professional organisation, but a kind organisation that was responsive, an organisation that really listened and acted to our customers. and, giving colleagues permission to be kind with our customers, to treat them as individuals and get to know those customers. And we've done over 7,000 hours of training with our colleagues on customer over the last 12 months. And we started that journey really with our people managers. So getting all of our people managers together and talking about customer, the importance of the consumer standards. Welcoming the role of the housing ombudsman was also something that I was really keen to do, because why shouldn't our customers have the right to raise something that we're not dealing with appropriately with the ombudsman? They should be able to do that. So we've put a huge amount of effort into creating a culture where customers are the priority. And I think that has been part of our success with our inspection, which started in March 2024, concluded in July. And, we weren't expecting to be C1, and we are not perfect. Right in the middle of our inspection, we had some very negative press right across the media, on the local news, about cases of damp and mold and unacceptable conditions. And at first it was, well, why didn't we know about this? And we didn't know about it. But actually, when we dug deep and investigated, we realized that we did. And we hadn't responded. So we had to hold our hands up. But what the regulator said to us, because that was right in the middle of the inspection, and I thought that this is not good. This is not a good moment for us. But the regulator said they were very impressed with how we dealt with it and how we engaged the customers and how we put things right. So that was a learning for me as well, that actually the regulator don't expect you to get everything right all of the time. And it's really difficult too with, large numbers of homes and customers. But they do expect you to take it seriously and put it right when you find there is an issue. So it was a great learning. And I think whilst I, fully support the professionalism of the sector, I don't think professionalism of the sector and doing the housing qualification is actually the answer to some of these challenges across the sector. I do think it's culture. And I think that culture of customer, really getting to know our customers and putting customers at the heart of decisions is the change that we need to make. And I see other organizations who are doing this brilliantly now, and, doing really great work on customer. And it's just amazing to see that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, Louise, as well, particularly around the professionalization perspective. It's all about culture for me, without a shadow of doubt. And as we look at today and your businesses today, how do you balance exactly that then? So how do you balance creating such a positive workplace culture with also the commercial necessities of running such a large housing association?
Yeah, it's really challenging, because of all the challenges in the sector. We were delighted to be confirmed as a great place to work in November last year. It's the first time for Gentoo, which is amazing, amazing to achieve that. And 79% of our colleagues felt that we were a great place to work. So culture is so important, but it's very easily broken, usually through trust. So it's important that we really make sure that our colleagues trust us and that we're open and honest. So that's our approach, really. When we have difficult issues, we're open about them, we talk about them, and communication is really key to that. So I do believe that sharing the situation and being honest with colleagues is what they want as well. We learned that through a lot of cultural work that we did. So, at the moment we've got some challenges that we're talking to our colleagues about, and we're very open and transparent about those. I think, being open about the financial challenges across the sector is important. We're right in the middle of pay deal discussions as well. It's important that our colleagues understand openly and honestly and know that they can trust us, that we are going to tell them exactly as it is. And that kind of helps us with dealing with that positive culture. But the reality is, as I said at the beginning, we never have enough money. We're always trying to look at efficiencies and do things differently.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's really interesting because you look at actually from an organization, this is a sector. Someone said this to me a few weeks ago, and it really kind of rung true, is just because we're a non-for-profit organization doesn't mean that we're not for performance. So we
Yeah,
have to be open with
absolutely.
the staff of going, these are the metrics, what we expect, but also driving that positive workplace culture of making sure that everyone is fully understanding of that, rather than that being that ambiguity of where people sit in regards to frameworks. So that's really interesting, Louise. And I guess just in regards to yourself, or when you took the role of chief executive, naturally there has been changes at an executive team, and you've built your own executive team, which is really, really great to see. So just in regards to building that team, there's been some internal appointments, there's been an external appointment there as well. So what key traits do you look for in your direct reports, and how do you also ensure that they complement your leadership style?
Yes, so I look for people who I think are brilliant and better than me at certain things. I think having an amazing team is so important. But firstly, we all have to be in it for the same reasons. So I think being driven by purpose, aligned to our values and our vision, that is really important to me. So, in our executive team, it's great that we have people who are very much aligned to what we're trying to achieve, and they're driven by that purpose. So everything we do is about the purpose, and you can see that within the team. It's so refreshing. But definitely, I wouldn't recruit anybody who wasn't, who didn't think that way. Everyone has to value colleagues and culture and customers as much as I do in the team. I think that's massively important. Customers and colleagues are so critical to our business. So I expect my team, are really as focused, if not more focused than me in that space. And then I think honesty and integrity, massively important, being able to trust each other and my team. I need to be able to share openly with them my thoughts, and trust that, they'll deal with that in the right way. And really being a collaborative team is so important. So I look at all of those things when I'm recruiting, and actually having that kind of commercial thinking is massively important as well. And we have that across our team. We've got quite a diverse team, actually, which is brilliant. Diversity can bring its challenges. It's dangerous not to have a diverse team. You need people who are different, but those differences can also make people rub with each other. So it's important that we have an opportunity as a team to disagree, and but then be able to just get along afterwards and put it behind us. So that's really important to me as well. And being able to make those difficult decisions for the greater good, not just for your team, but for the organization and for our customers and colleagues is massively important. I think I'm really lucky because I've got such a brilliant team. And I would extend that to our leadership team as well. The whole of executive and the leadership team are pulling in the right direction at the moment, which is fantastic. I'm very aware that those people are very marketable externally. And so I want to make sure that they're really enjoying their roles and getting the development they need. So I think that's another important point, Tom, that we can't make an assumption that somebody is going to be happy in their role for X amount of time. It's really important that we continue to develop and stretch our leadership teams.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I can always remember someone who well, Fiona, over at L&Q, said on the podcast quite a number of months ago now, just her desire to always drive radical candor in the exec team, where no one sits in their own lane, and that does create natural friction. But as long as kind of at the end everyone's friends, and we kind of in a work in that scenario, but you can all go out of that room knowing that everyone's noses are pointing in the right direction. I think so important. So it's and just talk to me about your corporate strategy, because when I read through that, it certainly emphasizes investing in both customers and colleagues, and just some of the numbers that you said at the beginning: 60,000 customers, 11,000 colleagues, 30,000 homes. There's a lot of numbers there. So how do you make sure, and how did those priorities interconnect with each other in practice?
Yeah, we so our strategy really is very much about delivering great services for our customers and providing warm and safe and decent homes for our customers. And so we take a lot of time reviewing the performance metrics for the organization and making sure that we are delivering what we say we're going to deliver. So I set some really stretched targets, which my team thought were a bit mad. So I've set a target to get to 90% customer satisfaction. We're currently about 78%. We were about 73, I think, when I set the target. But I am really keen to stretch our targets and make sure that we're all looking at continuously improving as an organization. But balancing all the elements of the strategy is something that we do with the board as well. So we have our regular performance reporting with the board, and as an executive team and leadership team, we are all over our numbers. But not forgetting that, what's behind those numbers and the data insights that we use to really look at how we're operating and how we're serving. So sometimes it's the how is more important than the what you do. And I think we find that sometimes with our data. Our data might look great, but our customers might be telling us something different. So why is that the case? So, but yeah, I would say we are very much a performance-driven organization now. Still got a way to improve, but we are making great progress.
The corporate strategy also talks, as you say there, the importance of customer satisfaction. It's also the importance, hence, clearly, your C1 grade is the importance of customer voice. So how do you ensure that you're hearing from all types of customers, including those ones who are less vocal, or obviously the terminology, the kind of silent minority or majority of those customers?
Yeah. So I think, customers and colleagues are intrinsically linked. So if you invest in your colleagues, they are feeling that they're being valued and doing a great place, doing a great job. And that Gentoo is a great place to work, makes a difference to our customer service. And we've seen that actually. So we know that is a fact. What we also know is that hearing from our customers is, really gives us the edge in terms of how we deliver our services. So we set up a brilliant customer committee in November 2023, who have made such a difference. I mean, they are so challenging. It is brilliant to be in that meeting with them. And it's chaired by the chair of the board, Emily Cox. In fact, as part of the regulatory inspection, the customers really challenged us in that meeting in front of the regulator, and it was a little bit it was nerve-wracking about what was going to come out of that discussion, because we were being inspected. But actually, the regulator again said that they felt that it was our customer committee really held us to account. And when we were talking about rent on that day, so it was quite challenging talking about rent increases and rent flexibility. So I think that that's something that we've done differently, is engage with customers. But then getting those diverse customer perspectives is really tricky. We do stuff online, but actually when we get our involved customers in a room and we work with them on scrutinizing some of our processes and our services, that's when we really find that there is a huge difference. Often it's the same customers coming to talk to us again and again. So getting to that group who are silent is a challenge. I don't think we've nailed that completely yet. One of the things we did last year, we invited the Housing Ombudsman to have a meeting with our customers, with the Ombudsman, and our board members were part of that. And we heard customers raise complaints with the Ombudsman, with Richard Blakeway in the room, that we weren't aware of. And so at the end of that session, we had our teams ready to talk to these customers. And one of the customers said that it's pointless raising anything with Gentoo because it doesn't get addressed. And we couldn't understand why that was. But this customer hadn't actually been in touch with us for years. And they had had a bad experience, which meant they'd given up basically a number of years ago. And we fixed that now, and they're a very positive customer who actually, they came back to tell the story to the board on what we've done quite recently. So I think it is really trying to get to that, those who are not speaking up. Often it's customers who are are absolutely desperate to get some work done. They've been on a waiting list for such a long time, or they're waiting for a home. We've got 19,000 people on our waiting list for a home. It's often those customers who, when you start talking with them, you find out their story and why they're reluctant to share their experiences. So we definitely need to do more work on that. But I think we have come a long way, really, on making those improvements.
And as we look forward, Louise, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges and opportunities facing the sector in the next 5 years? And I guess how are you and Gentoo preparing for those?
Yeah, I think, it is unfortunately all about money. We know the government have got challenges in being able to deliver everything they would like to. Part of their challenge is to deliver more homes. And we would like to be part of delivering that 1.5 million homes over the next 5 years. But we also know we don't have enough funding to do that. So that is a challenge for everybody in the sector. I think everybody wants to play a role in that. And our priority as part of our strategy is to invest in our current homes as a priority. And 90% of our homes were built before 1984. And, a lot of them have had challenges with damp and mold. Our repairs demand has increased. Damp and mold repeat visits is around 20%. So there's a huge cost of that. And then with the introduction of Awaab's law, which is absolutely the right thing to do, nobody can argue against it, but it does put increased pressures on us. And then, we have 25 high-rise buildings, and some of them are made of large panel systems, which is another challenge, going through those buildings, those structural surveys and deciding how we deal with those issues. So it's all about money. We never have enough money. However, I think we've got to make sure that we are as efficient as possible in running our businesses in social housing so that the government can get that return on their investment if we do see an increase funding for building more affordable homes. And also we have a responsibility to our customers to spend our money wisely. So I think we've got to really focus on trying to be as efficient as possible. I think also the changing demographic trends, the needs of our customers has increased the greater complexity of those customer needs. And that puts a lot of pressure on our colleagues who do amazing jobs, but they have really difficult jobs in dealing with some of those complex challenges. So it's really supporting them as well as we continue over the next few months and years. And I think finally getting investment from outside of the sector, so institutional investment into building more affordable homes is really important. If we can attract investors who want to, patient investors who want to invest for the long term, to support the need for social housing, affordable housing, that's what we've got to try and do to make ourselves attractive for investment.
Thank you, Louise. And before I get on to the quick fire questions, I do have one last question. So you look back in the last 2 years of obviously being the chief executive of Gentoo. What are you most proud of?
I'm really proud of our people and the amazing work they've done and how we've changed our culture. And obviously achieving the C1. We're still the largest social housing landlord in the country with a C1. And I'm hoping that will change and that others get there. But I am incredibly proud of that and, all the amazing work our colleagues have done to deliver that for us.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic achievement, something that you rightfully so should be very proud of. So, quick fire questions, Louise, before we finish. So, talk to me about what has been the most valuable leadership lesson you've learned.
I think you're only as good as your team. Having an amazing team, having brilliant people around you can trust, depend on, is the most important leadership lesson I've learned. It's really important that those people around you are headed in the same direction. So massively important to have that brilliant team.
Brilliant. And what advice would you give to an aspiring leader starting out on their journey?
I think get a coach. So I think that's one of the lessons for me, actually, that I hadn't had a coach for many years, but actually my coach has really helped me. So, I think trust your judgment, network, learn from others, and really just focus on doing the very best you can for your customers.
Brilliant. And what do you believe to be the key leadership qualities required in today's world?
Well, that's a really good question. I think humility is really important for all leaders now. And I also think resilience is massively important. To be able to deal with the highs and lows is massively important.
Brilliant. And final question, Louise, I promise you, one leadership book recommendation you give to the listeners?
I'm reading a really good book at the moment, actually, which is called Shoe Dog, and it's the story of Nike. Yeah, have you read it? It's
brilliant book. Brilliant.
Yeah, I hadn't read it. It's obviously been out for a number of years, but somebody I was talking to a few weeks ago about investment was, suggested I read that by Phil Knight. So that's really good. But I also think I've read loads of leadership books over the years, but I think recently I read The Diary of a Chief Exec by Stephen Bartlett. So that's also a really great read, actually. So very, very, very interesting to read that.
Definitely. Brilliant. Louise, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on the Housing Collective podcast, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Tom. Much appreciated. It's been great talking with you.